After being announced only a month ago, Sonic Dream Team was officially released on the Apple Arcade just a few days ago. This game pretty much just came out of nowhere, and to a lot of people's surprise, was an Apple Arcade exclusive, at least it is on launch. But despite that, the game looked pretty fun. The studio developing it, Sega Hardlight, is known for making Sonic mobile games, so a paid mobile game by them seemed like it had some potential. And let me just say right away, Sega Hardlight deserves some immense praise for what they ended up making in Sonic Dream Team. I don't think I'll have a non-spoiler review this time around, since this isn't a main release title like Sonic Frontiers and Sonic Superstars was, so I'm just gonna jump right into my full review of the game. First off, I need to get the obvious issue with this game right out of the way. That of course being that this game is indeed an Apple Arcade exclusive. Now I don't entirely have a problem with exclusive games, I think they're fine incentives to entice people to buy a specific product, but at the same time, they do end up cutting off a large part of a specific game's audience, just because they don't own the device that those exclusive games are playable on. Now I doubt Sonic Dream Team would have even been made if not for Apple's involvement in producing the game, so I think that's something worth considering when talking about whether or not the game should have been an exclusive. As for my opinion, I think it's pretty annoying when I'm only able to play a game on a specific console or device, so I do really hope that this does end up on consoles or PCs sometime in the future, because as I'll get into later on, I think this game really deserves it. I think Sonic games in particular should move on from platform-specific releases simply because they limit the game's potential audience, but also because they've been slowly moving away from that, re-releasing old exclusives like Sonic Colors as remastered versions on other consoles. Now all of that being said, if you own an Apple device and either have Apple Arcade or haven't used your free trial yet, I highly recommend that you try out Sonic Dream Team because it is legitimately worth playing. Heck, even if you used your free trial, just pay for 1 month of Apple Arcade and play the game, then cancel it when you're done, because it really is just that good. Now with all that out of the way, let's jump right into Sonic Dream Team. I'm going to go over a lot in this video, so I'll start it off with something simple, the story and characters. These go pretty hand in hand, since you unlock more characters as the story progresses. It's actually really similar to how Sonic freed his friends in Sonic Frontiers. So to begin with, Eggman has captured Cream the Rabbit, who is finally back in the Sonic game for the first time in a while, and he also has a new device known as the Reverie. Now I'm not entirely sure where he got this device from, or who even made the Reverie. If it was set in game, I must have just missed it, or they could possibly be saving that for the future, but regardless, Eggman has both of them and is trying to use the Reverie to make his dreams come true. Okay, pause. Quick explanation time as to what the Reverie is, because I'd rather talk about it now instead of later on when it's actually explained in game. So the Reverie was made by someone, not sure who, but there's an entity inside of it that is actually responsible for carrying out what it does, and that entity is known as REM. Yes, REM as in REM sleep. We know what you did with that one, Sega Hardlight. So anyways, REM's job is to make a pure-hearted individual's dreams come true. How exactly she does this is... well, it's never really shown or explained how, but that's what it does, so I guess we should take her word for it. A lot of the Reverie still seems to be a mystery, or is just ambiguous at best, but the reason Eggman has captured Cream in the first place is because he knows that the Reverie will only make dreams come true for a pure-hearted person. He tries filtering his dreams through Cream's mind in order to get REM to grant them, but she does eventually see through this and ends up trapping him in his own dreamscape. So the Reverie is a device that can grant dreams, is controlled by REM to some degree, and only works for a pure-hearted person. Got all that? Great. It's not really that important. So after REM traps Eggman in his dreamscape, Sonic and Co come along and investigate after being given some intel from Rouge. I'm assuming they came because she told them Eggman had captured Cream, which she found out somehow, but after they show up, they're all transported into the Reverie, while their bodies fall asleep in the real world. And this is where my one minor gripe with the story comes in at, because this entire game being a dream sequence really feels like some sort of filler episode that you'd see in a TV show or something. Which I guess it kind of is, since it's just a spin-off exclusive mobile game, but I still think some bigger implications could have been had from this game's story. Like, I just wish they went further into the world building here on what the Reverie actually is. Why hasn't it been seen until now in the Sonic series? A device that grants dreams sounds like it would be a pretty highly sought after device, not just by Eggman, but by a lot of different people, and yet we don't know where it came from, who built it, or how long ago it was even created. The worst part is that there's a perfect way to incorporate it into the Sonic series, using the lore from the most recent 3D Sonic game, Sonic Frontiers. The Ancients had a very similar Reverie-like device in that game, in the form of cyberspace, and that technology was only discovered in that game. So all they'd need to do is say that the Reverie was some sort of advanced cyberspace that the Ancients had made and left behind on the Starfall Islands. and after the events of Sonic Frontiers, Eggman discovered it there. That alone solves all 3 issues I brought up. It would have been made by the ancients on the Starfall Islands before they were all wiped out, and that also explains why no one would have known of its existence until very recently, and also how Eggman got his hands on it. Maybe I'm fixating a bit too much on this point, but I just really hate to see how easily they could have explained the Reverie's existence and given it some more backstory in-game based off of what we got in Sonic Frontiers, and yet we know nothing about it. But anyways, back to Dream Team's story. After Sonic and Co. find themselves inside the Reverie, REM tells Sonic that she should be able to free the rest of his friends if he's able to collect more Dream Orbs, which is the main thing you do in the game. And with that, the game really kicks off. At the start, Sonic and Amy are the only playable characters, both having the same speed type abilities like an air dash and lightspeed dash, and as you play more of the game and collect more Dream Orbs, the other 2 sets of characters are unlocked. Tails and Cream are unlocked after you finish the first world of the game, and Knuckles and Rouge are unlocked after you finish the second world. Pretty standard game stuff, nothing too complicated there. But the boss of the third world is something called the Guardian Hunter, which tries to take REM away so that Eggman can control the Reverie, but Knuckles or Rouge end up taking it down. However, REM is still drained from the single attack it managed to land on her. After that, the team make their way through the final world, and in the last boss, end up getting REM to the Dream Core, which allows her to come back to full strength and stop Eggman for good this time, also freeing them all from their sleep states and allowing them to wake up in the real world. REM also activates a dormancy protocol, which makes the Reverie unable to grant dreams for 1,000 years, so I doubt we'll be seeing the Reverie make a return in a mainline Sonic game. That being said, REM is still able to communicate with everyone, since Tails was able to modify the protocol a little bit before it was initiated, so I guess she could come back in some form or another. And that's it. Honestly, the game is kinda short, and while I'll talk more about future content later, I do at least hope it gets some sort of update every now and then, because I think the story does leave just a bit of room for more stuff to be thrown in later on. As for the characters, I think they were all pretty fine in the story. Nothing mind-blowing at all, but at least they actually are in character here, which has been a pretty nice thing to see in recent Sonic games. Cream's inclusion actually makes sense in the story too, since Eggman needed a pure-hearted individual, and I'm sure a child like Cream would probably fit that description pretty well, and also be easy to kidnap. Man, why does Sonic not put this guy in prison already? He's literally kidnapping children and trying to take over the world like every other week. I will say though, one more thing about the characters in this game is that the voice acting is extremely hit or miss. You could definitely tell this wasn't a big budget console release title, because some voices like Cream's and Rouge's just don't sound very good. Rouge especially. Sonic, Amy, and Tails all sound pretty good, about what we've come to expect from their respective voice actors so far, but Knuckles in this game was actually a standout to me, since I think his newest voice actor is beginning to do a lot better at portraying Knuckles. Rouge and Cream on the other hand though, all I can really say is yikes. Cream I can maybe partially understand, although I do prefer the more soft and quiet voice that she's had in the past, compared to whatever this is now.
You for all your hard work.
But Rouge is just a complete miss for me. There's not really an easy way to say that Rouge in this game just sounds bad. She's way too high-pitched, higher than Amy, and almost even Cream at some points, which does not fit her character at all. Like, we all know what Rouge is supposed to sound like, right? Like this.
Look who's talking.
Not like this.
Huh? What does that even mean?
I also learned some interesting things about her voice actress while I was looking into her, and let's just say, I hope she does better in the future. No hate towards anyone, I just think some of the voice acting in Dream Team can be a bit weird at times. Moving on from the story and characters, I think it's about time I get to talking about the gameplay, which I'm just gonna say right off the bat is really good. Like, almost too good. Seriously, Sega Hardlight cooked with the gameplay for Sonic Dream Team, and I'm honestly kinda shocked at how good it is. You start out with a tutorial going over all the mechanics in the game, at least the ones for Sonic and Amy, which include things like boosting, jumping, lightspeed dashing, air dashing, and best of all, momentum. Yes, this game has the ever-coveted momentum in it, something I know a lot of people have been wanting in Sonic games recently, and I think it's done super tastefully in this game. You can get by with almost never needing to use momentum, but when you do decide to keep your momentum going, a lot of the level design plays into it and allows you to pull off a ton of speedrunning strats. Combine that with some responsive and really good feeling controls, and you have some of the best gameplay in a Sonic game pretty much ever. This is what made the adventure game so fun for a lot of people, and somehow Sega Hardlight also managed to incorporate the boost into this game too, and not have it be completely overpowered. The boost in this game drains pretty quickly, but since you retain your momentum from boosting, it really doesn't need to be something that you always have to be using, especially with the more open level design. And instead of becoming the primary gameplay element in the levels, it's able to be used as more of a tool to cross wider gaps or get up bigger slopes. I seriously was surprised to see that this game not only had a boost, but that it managed to not feel like a boost game, almost at all. If I had to compare it to something, it would probably be the boost in Sonic Frontiers, but in that game you're almost always boosting, since the areas are super huge, and momentum is a bit of a tricky thing to use, since the level design in Frontiers doesn't really account for it at all. Plus in Sonic Dream Team, your boost only lasts for around 5 seconds at most, so making good use of it is pretty important sometimes. I can't really put it into more words just how surprised and really glad that I am that this game made the boost feel like a tool to utilize instead of being a completely broken core mechanic of the level design. The levels also have a really good amount of platforming, and while there definitely is some automation, since platforming in a mobile game could be hard without a controller, the openness of most levels makes running around feel really good, and exploration is definitely encouraged, as there are multiple paths and collectibles throughout the stages. Some pathways are only accessible as a specific type of character, like lightspeed dashing for Sonic and Amy, flying for Tails and Cream, and gliding and climbing for Rouge and Knuckles. So there's some genuine replayability throughout the levels too. It really is important for me to emphasize just how good most of the actual level design is in this game. There's a bunch of different pathways you can take, a lot of open areas which are filled with tons of different ways to traverse them, and it makes the game feel so much less linear than any other boost game. It's almost an insult to Dream Team to even call it a boost game, so I don't think I even will. This game feels like a hybrid between the boost games, adventure games, Lost World, and cyberspace all in one, and it is really good. Sonic Dream Team should have been what cyberspace in Sonic Frontiers was. They even have similar aesthetics and ways of accessing the levels, and Dream Team really puts into perspective just how good cyberspace in Sonic Frontiers could have been had they given it some better controls and some properly thought out, new level design. As I said too, there's a lot of levels where every character is playable, and those levels usually make sure to cater to each character's specific move style, whether that be climbing sections for Rouge and Knuckles, flying areas for Tails and Cream, or ring trails for lightspeed dashing as Sonic and Amy. They really did a good job at making every character type feel unique to play as, while still retaining the same base moveset and control, so that each one feels really good to play as. There's some minor gripes I have with the flying for Cream and Tails being too short and too slow, but the game doesn't make you rely on their flight too much, and when it does, it makes sure to give you plenty of flight refreshes mid-air. Other than that one small thing, I think the characters are all great. I've seen some complaints about the gliding for Rouge and Knuckles being too tanky, but I almost never needed to do a full turn while gliding, so I didn't think it was too much of an issue. So basically what I'm saying from all of this is that you should really go play this game if you're at all able to. It's available on Apple TVs, iPhones, iPads, and Macs, so if you own any of those devices, I highly recommend giving Dream Team a try, because the gameplay is super fun. It's kind of a short game, but it's definitely a fun one regardless. Another thing that was nice to see, which kinda goes alongside the level design, was completely original level themes. Like I said in my Sonic Superstars review, it's a bit sad that us Sonic fans get excited from seeing new level themes, but after seeing Green Hill as the first level in so many Sonic games in the past, we make sure to celebrate every time now that it isn't. These level themes do remind me a bit of Sonic Lost World, Cyberspace in Sonic Frontiers, and Fall Guys with the balloon aesthetic of the world, and I think they're all pretty good. There isn't a single bad level or world in this game, both in level design and theme, so that's definitely nice to see. My favorite is easily Ego City though. The look of it and the fact that it's the final zone make it really fun to play through, but I also really like the music here as well. Finally moving on from the levels now, I'll briefly go over the bosses in the game. Briefly because there's only 4 of them, and they're all kinda pushovers anyways. The first boss is Dr. Crabulus, which takes 4 hits to defeat and is super easy to beat. All you gotta do is hit him a few times when he's down, and obviously make sure to dodge his attacks. The next boss has 2 phases, one against the factory foreman, and the second one where they all get together in a big mech and become the 4-man. This one was probably the most difficult since you need to dodge a bunch of lasers and stuff, but dying doesn't restart the boss at all, so there really isn't any penalty for dying. The third boss is the Guardian Hunter, which I already talked about, but the boss fight plays like a more traditional boost game boss where you have to boost up to the boss and hit it. The gravity switching mechanic was pretty cool, but it doesn't really do much in the boss fight, so there isn't too much uniqueness here, and it's also pretty easy to hit the boss. The final boss is barely even a boss, since you don't even directly damage anything at all. You just have to complete a final stage, which switches between all the characters, and at the end you play as Sonic, who manages to revive Ariam after putting her in the reboot van, and she's the one who takes down Nightmare Eggman. I do hope Eggman takes the idea of Nightmare Eggman and tries to use it again in a mainline game, because it was a super cool idea and look for a boss fight, but I don't personally think they capitalized on it very well in the game. I did still like the final stage, switching between all the characters, but I do also wish there was a more traditional boss section to it as well. Part of the boss fights that I noticed, which is actually something that translates throughout the whole game, is that it really isn't that hard. I mean, sure, there's sometimes you might fly off the stage trying to speedrun a certain section, but I never had any moments where I got frustrated at a specific level or zone, which honestly was kinda refreshing. Difficulty is still something that I'd like to see, and I'll go into some more difficult things in the game in a minute, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't nice to have a well-balanced Sonic game in terms of difficulty. A lot of recent Sonic games have either been way too easy or way too difficult, and I think Dream Team does a really good job of not being either. Instead, it's just a fun adventure all the way through. Nothing mind-numbingly hard, but nothing so boring that you're falling asleep either, which is honestly a pretty good achievement for a Sonic game. The boss fights maybe could have used a bit more challenge, since I do think those are probably the one area of the game that I would have liked to have some harder challenge in, but there's only 4 of them in the game, and they're over so fast that you barely even remember you played them by the end. But if you are someone that likes more difficult content in your Sonic games, well, luckily there are a few ways you can get it in Dream Team. Not a ton, but there definitely are a few. One of those being the rotating Tails challenges. Now, I'm not entirely sure how these challenges are made, or even chosen, but of the ones that I played through, they seem to be a bit more difficult than the regular base game. These consist of the same tasks and goals of the normal game, but with stricter time limits or slightly harder level design. I never really got close to failing a time trial while going through the main game, but I got pretty close to failing in some of the Tails challenges. Now, of course, you don't really get any penalty for failing, at least I don't think you do, so you can just keep retrying them over and over, which is nice. But they did feel a tad bit more challenging than the base game. Now, these Tails challenges rotate on a timer, and like I said, I'm not exactly sure how they're chosen or really when, but that means that there should be some form of replayability for Sonic Dream Team, at least until you run out of things to collect. Speaking of which, let's go over the collectibles. Dream Team features collectibles in the form of statues that you can unlock in your collections menu. These range from simple statues of all the characters in the game to a wide variety of items that are seen throughout it. I didn't have the time or ability to collect every statue yet because I wanted to get this review out sooner rather than later, and even still it's a bit later than I would like, but some of the statues require a pretty decent amount of grinding or waiting. In the first mission of every act in the game, there are red rings and blue coins to collect. Getting every red ring in the stage will reward you with an extra dream orb, which I'll get into in a second, but collecting every blue coin will grant you a specific statue associated with that stage. I only managed to get every blue coin in the first level. I'll probably go back through later and get them all, and I unlocked this statue from collecting them all. Now, while all these statues aren't anything crazy, I do like that they were included, and they do provide completionists with more things to do after beating the main game. Now into the Dream Orbs. These are what you collect after beating any mission in the game, and these allow you to progress through the story and, well, finish the game. You have to get a certain amount of these in order to unlock future levels, but if you're doing every mission in every act, you shouldn't ever have to go back from a lack of orbs, so they're really not all that important. I mean, they have story significance, sure, but in terms of actual gameplay, they aren't anything that you should need to worry about, other than making sure you're actually collecting them. Now, the only thing that I'm unsure about when it comes to the blue coins and statues is if you actually unlock something extra once you have every single statue. I would hope so, since collecting everything in the game seems like it would deserve a reward, but then again it's just a mobile game, and the statues already are a reward in a sense. But yeah, unsure if you actually get anything other than a feeling of accomplishment for getting every statue. Another thing I'd like to address, since it seems to be a common topic when looking at Sonic games, is the performance and polish of the game, which is extremely high quality. I mean, think of how Sonic games usually launch, especially recent ones like Sonic Frontiers or Sonic Superstars, and look at how many updates they usually release to fix bugs. Then take a look at Sonic Dream Team, take some time to play it, and realize you never encountered a single bug or glitch throughout your entire playthrough. That's literally what happened for me, and I must say, it is extremely refreshing having a Sonic game that controls well, isn't janky, and is almost entirely bug-free. I'm sure there definitely are some bugs. I don't think there's been a single game in history that's launched with none before, but compared to how much jank and lack of polish some Sonic games have launched with in the past, Sonic Dream Team really goes to show just how good a Sonic game can be if the developers are given enough time to polish up the game and iron out any major bugs. Another benefit that comes with that as well is the performance of the game, which I'll admit maybe isn't as good as I think it could be, but it's a lot better than I was expecting. I played Sonic Dream Team on an iPhone 15 with mostly high settings and the resolution turned up, and I did have some minor frame drops every now and then, but I was also recording at the same time, so I'm sure that could have played a part in the frame drops I experienced. I have heard that turning down the resolution can make it a lot more stable in terms of frame rate, so I tried it, and that definitely did help a little bit. Overall, the game's performance plays just fine, even if it could have been better, but the game looked really good visually and on mobile, so I'm not too upset with how the game performed. You almost have to think of it like playing a Switch game. In fact, I bet this game would be perfect on the Switch. Maybe they should consider porting this game to consoles. Just a wild idea, but hopefully one they're considering after all the positive feedback they've been getting so far about this game. And now, I've gone this long without talking about it so far, because it's something that's important to me when it comes to Sonic games: the music. Sonic games are almost universally known for having good music, even if they have bad gameplay. So is this one any different? Well, big surprise, but no, not at all. This game's music is pretty good. I probably won't go super in depth with it, because after listening to the full game's OST, there weren't any particular tracks that really stuck out to me as being super good, but that's not like any of this is bad either, just good music to listen to while playing the game. I do maybe wish the boss themes were a bit more high energy, and of course any Sonic game could use more guitar, but I did feel like this one in particular was lacking some good guitar, since it's really only in the final boss theme and in the opening. But again, those are just me looking for extremely small nitpicks, because this game has some great themes. Ones that I wasn't sure would fit at first, like the ambient tracks, but after listening to them and playing the levels where they appear in game, I can pretty confidently say that I did enjoy all of it, something that I'm pretty happy to say, after half of Sonic Superstars soundtrack turned out the way it did. Finally, I'd like to go over the two most important things that I think need to be addressed in this video, the first being future content for Sonic Dream Team. I'd love to see more content for this game in the future, and I really hope they're able to make more of it down the road. The game's ending sorta leaves it open for more adventures in the Reverie, but they could also just add more zones that take place before the end of the game, or have Eggman somehow take back control of it. Either way, I hope that some form of future content is added to this game, because despite loving almost every aspect of this game, it is relatively short, only taking around 3 or 4 hours to finish, and maybe another 3 or 4 to 100%. Not bad for a game I can play on my phone, but typically mobile games are ongoing things that are constantly updating, and while I know this isn't a traditional mobile game, since it's on the Apple Arcade, I think it would be in Sega's best interest to keep updating the game. That way people stay subscribed to Apple Arcade, so they can keep playing it. If there were any extra zones or even acts added onto the existing ones, I'd probably give them a shot, and not even just so I could make a video about them, but because I genuinely enjoyed the game that much that I'd be willing to resubscribe to Apple Arcade for a month so I could play more Dream Team. It's looking like the game will have some decent replayability for a little while, with the extra rotating Tails challenges and collectibles, but I'd still like to see more things beyond that for Dream Team in the future. And now that I've just talked about how much I want more content for this game, I think that should put into perspective just how much I enjoyed the game. So now you're probably wondering, well, should I play Sonic Dream Team? And my answer is an absolute yes. If you have the means at all to play this game, 100% go and give it a shot, because it's an incredibly fun experience. It may not be perfect, but for a mobile game, it nearly is. I bet most people with an Apple device probably haven't claimed their free 1-month trial of Apple Arcade yet, so if you have that lying around at all, I highly suggest you claim it and play Sonic Dream Team. I hope Sega can see how much praise this game is getting and bring it to more platforms in the future, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. In the meantime, I hope they're also looking at how much people are enjoying the gameplay of Dream Team, so that they can implement some of the things in it to more main Sonic titles, because if Sonic Frontiers or Sonic Superstars was as fun and polished as this game was, Sonic could be on top of the world, even if he may be working his way back up there as of recently. I really enjoyed Sonic Dream Team, and I hope you did too, or are going to if you haven't played it yet. Thanks for watching this pretty stacked review of a mobile game that only like 10 people are actually gonna play. Sorry for having this video out a bit later than usual, but I was pretty busy this week, so thanks for being patient. Feel free to drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more Sonic content in the future, and I'll see you next time.